Hey everyone, thanks for joining. Today what we're going to talk about is creating a VCS connection from Terraform Cloud, or now HCP Terraform, into Azure DevOps. So in our last videos, one of the things that we talked about was the UDF pipeline framework and the framework that we can use inside of Azure DevOps and GitHub to be able to connect all that goes around Azure DevOps, all that we're doing within the tool chain to deploy code, to build code, and to be able to manage that across our entire organization. So one of the things that we also do is we use Terraform to manage the entire platform. So Terraform is fantastic, and Microsoft has some really great providers that work with Azure DevOps and GitHub so that everything that you're doing that inside of those platforms, it can be completely automated inside of Terraform. If you currently are managing those platforms manually, or you have some sort of guide or document that you're following, or worse yet, you don't have a guide at all, then this is really for you. Terraform allows you to automate all of those configurations and components for most things. Now there are pieces of the provider that as we get into this, that the provider yet still doesn't support. However, there are a lot of things that those providers do support so that you're able to completely manage these platforms as infrastructure as code. So as we're building out the UDF pipeline framework and we're building out all these components as part of these demos, one of the things that we want to do is start with Terraform right away. Let's get those components and those configurations going so that as we build these pieces, we're not going to build them manually. We're going to do that and configure that inside of Terraform so you can now manage that all as code. So one of the first things that we need to do is set up a VCS connection from our Terraform org over into either Azure DevOps or GitHub. So today what we're going to do is we're going to set that connection up to Azure DevOps, and then in a future video we'll set that up into GitHub and show that you can do both of those depending on where your repositories reside. So right now what I'm inside of our Terraform organization, and you'll see that I have one for Make Solutions. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into our settings and we're going to go create a VCS provider. So if I scroll down here, and I'm going to move myself out of the way, and we're going to go down to providers, and we're going to add a VCS provider. So you have to be an admin inside of the organization or have permissions to be able to create the VCS provider, but that's pretty much a given. So what you'll see here is all the various options that you can connect to. Of course, we are all about GitHub and Azure DevOps, so those are the ones that we, of course, are concerned about. And we're going to select Azure DevOps, and you can configure one, either that's to ADO server, so TFS on-prem, or you can do into Azure DevOps in the cloud, which of course is the one that we're going to do today. Now, Terraform does a pretty good job of giving you explanation and instructions on how to do this. Honestly, it's very straightforward, and a lot of the instructions are right here. So what this is going to do is it's going to create an OAuth connection from Terraform Cloud, I keep calling it Terraform Cloud, from HCP Terraform into Azure DevOps. So what's really recommended here, I'm going to do this as one of our test users. It's really recommended that you have some sort of service account that does this. Now, it would be really great that if Terraform were to update this and we had some other sort of modern authentication method beyond OAuth that was making this connection over into ADO, use some sort of service principal or something like that that would authenticate into Azure DevOps. But today, this is all we have. So I'm logged in as that particular user. That user has access into Terraform. So here's another thing with this, is when you're adding a user here, you want this to be a service account. However, that service account, you have to be able to click the confirmation link inside of Terraform for this to work. And then the only way you can get that confirmation link is if that user has an email. So I had a really fun time the past few minutes prepping in this video of creating an email account for this user and then having to pay for a mailbox for that user. So it doesn't always need a mailbox, but it does need a mailbox when you're initially setting up this user. So what we're going to do is we clicked inside of creating an ADO services VCS version control system. And what I'm going to do is it's going to create an OAuth application inside of a part of our Azure DevOps user. So what you'll see there is it gives us pretty much all the information that we need to do and allows us to copy that pretty easily. So we can just put company name is going to be HashiCorp. We're going to take the application name and put that here. And then it's going to want us to give us the website URL, which we can come down here. So obviously not all the fields are required. Get the callback URL, put that into here. So one of the things that it mentions here is the scopes of what this OAuth application is able to do, and it should only have code read and code status. Because what's going to happen is as we create different configurations inside of Terraform, we're going to use this single VCS provider in order to facilitate that connection. So this is not the account that is going to authenticate into ADO for Terraform to make the changes. It can be the same user. It does not have to be. And I'll show you why we don't do that. Well, we're going to create actually a separate service principal that does this. And so this is just facilitating that connection that when we create new configurations inside of Terraform, it's going to authenticate as this user so that it can read those repositories for us. So what it wants is code read and code status. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give it code read. I'm going to give it code status. All of that looks great. I'm going to create this application. So now this OAuth application is tied to our user, Joe Jackson, and that's what we're going to configure inside of Terraform. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this app ID. It's really fun. I'm going to put this, so we're going to call this ADO. Put that in as our app ID. And then we're going to grab our client secret. Don't worry, this will be all completely redone after this video, so you can take that client secret all you want. It won't be valid after this. But anyway, that's how you do it. So we'll grab that client secret, validate that we can do this connection. So it's going to go ahead and validate that. It wants to know if we're going to allow this particular OAuth application, grant these to HashiCorp. Do we accept that? Yes, we do. Now we've created our VCS provider. So a couple of the things in the settings that we're going to talk about. So are we going to enable the workspaces to use this VCS connection? Absolutely. So we can create multiple VCS connections and then we can scope those VCS connections of who can use them. Now there's a lot of different ways you can do this. I don't typically control this at the VCS level. I'll control who has access to what based off of the various projects. So if you want to control this here, you can, but at the same time, what I typically do is whoever has access into the various projects, that's where I'm going to control where that access is granted. So workspace is enabled, yes. We're going to do all the particular projects for now. We don't need any SSH keys for this. This is pretty straightforward, and skip and finish. So now what we have here is a VCS provider that we can now use to connect into Azure DevOps, and we'll test this in a minute. So getting started with Terraform, and we'll start to create some videos of how you start to put these pieces together. This is really a chicken and egg type of thing, is we have to create some of the components in Terraform first manually. You just have to. And then what we're going to do is we're going to use Terraform to manage Terraform, and we'll show you exactly how to do that. But initially, when you are starting from scratch, you have to create some of these components manually. We're going to import them into state and then show you now going forward, we can start to use Terraform to manage all the pieces. So just a caveat there, you have to start manually somewhere, and we'll show you exactly how to create those, how to import them to state, how that all looks. So now if I were to create a brand new workspace and, I don't have a project. So I'm just going to have this default project. This is not where I would put things, but I just want to show you the connection and what that looks like. We're going to end up creating prod and non-prod projects with configurations across both so that you can actually have one configuration in your source code and have that feed prod and non-prod at the same time. This is not copying it to prod, non-prod folders. You can have one place just like you do in application development and have that push to all of the places that you need to in a prod and a non-prod. So more to come on that. So if we go into creating a workspace, the VCS, the version control workflow is very, very nice. You're going to see here's our version control system. And now what that's going to do is now I can see that it has access. I don't have any Terraform repos there yet. We're going to do those together. But you'll see that now it can see the single code repository that I have over in my home project. So just to validate that that's true, and this is empty. Again, this is a vanilla environment. We're going to build it out together. So you can see that this is a code repo is there because an ADO project has to have a code repo. It cannot not have one. So we can see that this is here, and that's what that VCS is facilitating. So as we create different organizations, we're going to tie them to that particular VCS so that it has access. So what we're going to do in a next video, what we'll do is we'll show you how to create this VCS to GitHub, as GitHub has a few other options you can do. We'll show you which one of those is the best to do in an organizational setting and get that set up so you can see what that looks like. So as always, thanks for joining us today. If you are using Terraform to manage Azure DevOps or GitHub, we'd love to hear your experience. Drop a comment down below. We'd love to have that conversation. And as always, if you're new to this channel, like this video, subscribe, and we're going to build DevOps together. So thanks for joining, and we'll see you in the next video.